on a tour with other people, so please be honored here. I mean, you guys have been great. There, and again, just listen to the tour guide. So we just have to go in and check in. I don't know if they're gonna. I don't know if they're gonna allow that, Andrew. You can try, but if they might tell you to take it off.
Okay.
A lot of the stuff is they don't want hanging.
My head's higher than it.
Yeah.
Your head is a little bit higher.
It's fine.
Oh, no thanks.
Good job. Good work. That's a lot to round everyone up, so that's awesome. Good work, you all. That's good. This one. I did that. That's why I kept doing that one time, and you had to come help me. It's like, Connie, I can't do this.
Again, I did it again.
We're on to have 5 guys in a row.
All right, thank you very much.
But, so it does happen.
Well, thank you to Ranger Don to keeping you all entertained. We're so happy to have him here. Ranger Don is a seasoned Yellowstone National Park Ranger, as well as a retired Alaskan state trooper. So, don't anybody get out of line today. We're good. We're good. So, my name is Connie, and I volunteer here. And on behalf of the National Park Service, I'd like to welcome you all to Geology National Monument, the second longest cave in the United States, the 4th longest in the world. So, it's right now, it's at 217 miles. The exploration is continuing, and we hope maybe someday to move into first place. We'll see. Just a couple of things before we go into the cave. It looks like you all are very well prepared. There's some things that we want to point out for your protection and also the protection of the cave. Looks like everyone has appropriate shoes on. And as you know, there's no open-toed shoes allowed in the cave. The temperature is 49 degrees year-round. The humidity is 98%. Looks like you all have jackets. If you're having a good hair day, forget about it. And we also ask you not to take in any food, drinks, candy, gum, anything like that into the cave, as well as backpacks or large purses or anything like that. Cameras are fine. Even flash pictures are fine as well. One thing we do ask you about photography is not to take pictures while on the stairs. For obvious reasons, one being the domino effect. I'm in the front, so those are a couple things to remember as well. We also ask you to protect the cave by not touching any of the cave surfaces. Some years we have 80,000 visitors, and if everyone would touch the cave walls, you can imagine what the oils in our skins would do to the surface of the cave. So we ask you that, and also we ask you to stay on the paths. We have either cement or stainless steel. So if you're not on one of those two, you are lost. So just remember those as well. And with no further ado, then I think we'll take 2 trips down the elevator. Ranger Don will take a group, and I'll take the other half. So. Head down. This is a fairly current map of our cave. Of course, as exploration continues, these lines will continue increasing. We actually, if you look out the window, everything you see has cave underneath. The cave is under about 4 square miles of surface area. So imagine 217 miles. under 4 square miles of surface area. Just a labyrinth, layers and layers of passages. And this map, the colors highlight the different depths of the passages. So we'll be going, see the small black square up here? I don't know if you can see it well, but as you go toward the elevator, you can look. This is an enlarged version of that. We'll be ending up first in this room called the target room and doing a half-mile loop. So you'll be seeing just a small portion of the cave, but I think definitely some of the highlights of the cave is what you'll be seeing. So we'll get the elevator started. I'll get the first batch down. Sometimes the next one won't open until the doors close on this one.
So the question is how far does this take us down? 24 stories. We're going to a total of, there 40 stories below the surface level, and 379 feet is basically the deepest part of the cave. So this is one of the fastest public elevators in South Dakota, one of the longest too, at 23 stories, which tells you we don't have that big a population, and we don't have very big buildings, especially compared to Pittsburgh and some of the other places that you guys maybe are used to. So, but that's okay. All right, once we jump on out, we're going to go through an airlock and then head to your left. Head to your left, guys.
I'm a cold person.
So, how do you like our cave? This is fake. This is fake, and I always tell those tacked out people, especially when they have kids, it's fine to touch this wall. You really need
I was
to
gonna
touch
step on it until I read no step. I was like, oh no.
So I stopped you here because this is an airlock door. So Jewel Cave only has one opening to the outside. It's down the highway about a mile by car. It's called the historic entrance, and it's the only opening that air can come through. So in order to protect the cave environment, any other doors are airlock doors such as this one.
Can you see it from the road?
Yes, you can.
I think
yes,
you
can. When you come around the curve, you bet. And it's really important for us to keep the balance, keep the environment balanced, because scientists, because this is a breathing cave, can measure the volume of air in the cave, which they estimate to be 8 billion cubic feet. Now, doing the math and looking at the known cave, which is now 217 miles, they estimate that only 3 to 5% of this cave has been explored. Wow. So I see a lot of young people here. We need explorers. So all right, we'll go on through here.
Isn't the National Park Service doing the exploring on the cave?
Right.
We do volunteer cavers and the National Park Service. We always have one of our representatives with them, but there is a lot of cavers that are much more proficient than our National Park Service ones. We're going to learn about a few of those on our tour today.
I know, for real, yeah. Well, we should start out as a seasonal here and do a great, that's another great way to start.
I can turn mine on.
Oh, you brought yours?
Camera, light.
I got this.
Oh, that's fun, all right.
Take advantage of it now.
Yeah, I know, this is great.
Use the handrails. Guys, make sure you're using the handrails all the time.
I always love to see the first steps into the cave.
Yeah.
And it's still, and it's for so many years, it's still new.
We did
Mitch, no wandering.
It's what he does best, though.
Ranger Don and I were just talking about, we love to watch people come into the cave and just look, you know, heads up at their first reaction. And we'll talk a lot about this later, but a lot of people notice this loft up here. It's called the Surprise Loft. And two explorers, whom you'll hear about later by the names of Herb and Jan Kahn, actually found this room coming through that loft. So you can imagine how it got its name, Surprise Loft. But this is a place where we like to talk a little bit about how this cave was discovered. And I do want to tell you, feel free to take pictures as I talk. I won't be offended if your back is turned toward me if you're looking around, because you think an hour and 20 minutes is long, but it's fairly limited. So I have a loud voice, so I'll tell you a little bit about the first people that found this cave. Their names were Frank and Albert Michaud. And Frank and Albert were ranchers and also prospectors. Well, they were riding horseback through Hell Canyon when they heard a whistling sound coming out from the side of the canyon wall. So, of course, being curious, they climbed up the canyon wall, and sure enough, there was a hole. Now, it was too small for people to fit through. It was quite small. Now, what do you think they would want to investigate more? What do you think a prospector would do if he found a small hole and wanted to make it big really fast?
Put some dynamite in it.
I heard dynamite, yes. They rode back to the ranch, and so what used to be the natural entrance of Jewel Cave is now called the historic entrance, and it's the size of a person. So upon entering the cave, they might have seen features that looked like this. Of course, they were not in this part of the cave. It'd take us about 4 hours of caving to get to the entrance, the historic entrance. So right here, they might have seen a formation that looked like this. Now, this formation is called Dogtooth Spar, and Dogtooth Spar is a 6-sided crystal that comes to a point resembling the canine tooth of a dog. Now, all the formations in Jewel Cave are made out of calcite, so that would be an easy test question if I asked you, what is this made of? All you have to do is say calcite when I'm asking about a formation. Now, the majority of the formations in Jewel Cave, actually about 80% of the formations are this type of formations. This is called nailhead spar. Nailhead spar is a 3-sided crystal, has a flat top resembling the head of a nail, so hence the name nailhead spar. Now, all the calcite formations in Jewel Cave are naturally clear or white, but they become discolored by different substances, different minerals in the cave. And this is an instance of that where they look more of a lighter brown color. Now, those of you that are closer to the rail, you might see this down here. We'll be walking right by this. All this surface right here, this black, bumpy-looking surface, it's also nailhead spars. You know, as you walk along and as we lead you through the paths, you can look all around and see this nailhead spar. The nailhead spar here is black because of a substance called manganese, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. It's a very interesting element on the periodic table, actually. So they found these amazing formations, and they thought, probably rightly so, that these formations were made of quartz, because quartz is a super common mineral found here in the Black Hills. But quartz is also associated with the precious metal, gold. So they were pretty excited. They thought, yes, we'll mine here and we'll get rich. So they went to Custer, the small mining town at the time. They got themselves a mining claim called the Jewel Tunnel Lode. Well, upon returning and investigating further, they realized that these crystals weren't quartz at all. They were calcite, which is about as hard as our fingernails, just about as valuable. So they were not going to get rich. They didn't give up easily. They thought, okay, we can give tours. Now, some of you are familiar with Wind Cave. It's not far from here, about 45 minutes by car. Wind Cave was actually operating as a tourist site already way back in 1900. So they thought, yes, we can give tours. So they fixed up a really kind of a rough tour route. They had stairs made out of logs, and they actually had ropes with stirrups, and they gave visitors a tin can with a candle in it, charged them a nickel, and sent them off on their adventure. Now, that sounds really fun, right? You'd think that'd do really well. Well, they didn't think through one small detail. It was a half-day's horseback ride from Custer to Jewel Cave, and then, of course, another half day's back. So the visitation was not really good. They didn't give up again, though. They thought, well, we'll make a hotel and a dance hall. And actually, you can see a picture of it up in the visitor center. And it's pretty funny. The first dance, or maybe one of the first dances, I don't know, but one of the first dances that they had, 23 people showed up, but they were all men. Yeah, there were a lot of miners, and there weren't a lot of women around back in the day, apparently. So that didn't work. And their tour business gradually faded off. But enough people saw the cave that word made its way to Washington, D.C., where President Theodore Roosevelt was in office at the time. And most people, when I say his name, they're like, aha, they know that Theodore Roosevelt was a huge proponent of preserving our public spaces. So way back in 1908, he declared Jewel Cave a national monument. So, a little bit of the history. We'll continue on now with our tour. First, I do like to ask, is everyone adapting to the cave environment? Mm-hmm. Great. This is always a good spot if you feel like, this might not be for me. Much easier to turn back here. But I'd also ask you, when we go up and down the stairs, again, no photographs on the stairs, and also try not to let a space of more than 10 feet get between you and the person in front of you or behind you. If we get too spread out, then of course we lose some time and we might not be able to see as much of the cave. So, Ranger Don will be the caboose, and I am sure he will keep everybody in line.
Well, I got a hole on the railing.
This is a good stopping point where I like to give the world's shortest geology lesson. So many people wonder, how did this get here? We know now how it was discovered, but how did this cave get here? And the story actually begins about 350 million years ago, when where we're standing right now is covered by a shallow sea. The sea stretched from what is now Canada all the way to from what is now Texas. Well, as the sea slowly dried up, the sea creatures, of course, many of them high in calcium, slowly fell to the bottom, became compressed, and became the limestone that we see. So I'll just show you, here's a bare spot, here's limestone right here. The limestone in the Black Hills, we call Pahasapa limestone. It's a particular type of limestone. Pahasapa is the Dakota word for Black Hills. So we have limestone, but we have no cave yet. So we fast forward to the relatively recent past of about 70 million years ago, when an event occurred called the Black Hills Uplift. Now this was volcanic activity that pushed magma up through the Earth's surface, and actually it created the central core of the Black Hills, which if you've been to Mount Rushmore, or Black Elk Peak, or Crazy Horse, all that beautiful granite began forming during that Black Hills Uplift. Now we didn't have the granite here, but tiny cracks were made in this limestone during that event, and water began seeping through the cracks. As it did, it picked up organic material, and it became something that sounds really sinister, carbonic acid. But I admit, I've had a drink of carbonic acid many, many times. Any guesses? Soda, or anything carbonated. Soda, beer, sparkling water has carbonic acid in it. Now, when I was a little girl, my mom told me, don't drink too much soda because you will get cavities. And sure enough, imagine this area filled with acid-laden water, slowly eating away the limestone. One giant cavity. So that's a lesson. Moms are always right. So just remember that. So, again, we have part of the cave, but the story doesn't end. The carbonic acid-laden water was also saturated with minerals, and these minerals had to go somewhere. They precipitated onto the walls of the cave, and then, as I mentioned, they created all this nailhead spar that covers 80% of our cave surface. Now, this is a top view of this nailhead spar crystals, but I love this spot here because if you look here, you can see the top of the spar crystals are sort of a brown color, and then you can see the cross section is the whitish color. So, and you can see this is the limestone. So you really get an image of what those nailhead spar crystals really look like, rather than just from the top surface of them. So you wonder, what happened here? Why is there limestone here and nailhead spar here? Well, one final event occurred in the development of this cave, and it was called breakdown. So as water left the cave, of course the buoyancy that it provided was gone. And what happened is things started falling down. Anything from small rocks to large boulders. I don't know if you can all see this one, but we like to point this out. And you farther back as you walk by, you'll want to look at this. I like this rock. We call it Guillotine Rock. And you can see exactly where it came out during the breakdown period. It's just like a puzzle piece. Many of the large boulders that you'll be seeing, of course, fell during the breakdown period. In fact, in just a little bit, we'll be going under pretty much a small Volkswagen-sized boulder directly overhead. No worries, this event happened long, long ago, and we have not had rock falls during the time that this scenic route has been operating, since 1972. So I think we're good. You notice we didn't do hard hats. All right, well, I think we'll continue on then. I'll move by you here. Also, feel free if you do have questions. I do. We are always you'll see something that looks a little different, a different formation. This is called boxwork. And Wind Cave has about over 95% of the known boxwork in the world. So it is a rare formation. We have a tiny bit. We have just a few spots in the cave of boxwork. Here's some here and here, and there's some over here as well. So as you travel down this corridor, it's also a calcite formation. It began forming before Jewel Cave, the rest of the features were formed. So again, tiny cracks in the limestone were filled with very supersaturated water containing lots of minerals. And what happened is, as the nailhead spar peeled off during the breakdown period, then the limestone that was in between all these boxwork crystals slowly dissolved away. Geologists think either by water or air, just as if you had a brick wall and you took the bricks out and left the mortar. The boxwork would be similar to the mortar between the bricks. And again, it's older than from other formations in Jewel Cave. So I always like to take just a moment to point that out. Because I always think something rare. How many people on Earth have seen boxwork when you think about it? Except if you've been in Jewel Cave or Wind Cave. So it's always fun to see something that other people have.
Is there still red light flashing? Cool.
So as we go up the stairs, you'll see a formation on your left called popcorn. And yes, it looks like popcorn. It has something over it called glowstone that looks like caramel. So we have caramel popcorn. Food is a big theme here.
Is this stuff right here, the boxwork?
Yep.
Yeah.
can tell. I did not realize that half of our group are geology students and professors, so I told them I'm glad I just learned that now before I gave the geology talk. Totally intimidated. But, first what I'd like to do is ask you, would you like to see how the cave really looks? You have to say yes.
Yes.
Thank you, thank you. So you can imagine it's about 10 feet dark in here. And to be comfortable, sometimes it's good to be like near a rail or something, or near a very good person, because it is historic. So, something that I would like to remind you that if you have any type of LED screen on your telephone or your camera, anything that lights up at all, I see a red light. Make sure you turn that off just for a couple of minutes, okay? Also, I don't think anybody wore their light-up shoes today, but we have to warn kids about that. Take just a moment for the LED lights to fade. So, let's just stop for a moment and just in silence and listen for a moment. Okay, anybody, what sense has maybe come into play? Hearing and smell. Right. Yes. Some of you probably heard water dripping. So we have gone from a dry part of the cave to a wet part of the cave. And very little of Jewel Cave is wet, but most of our tour now will be in wetter parts of the cave, which is really cool. But try to put your hand in front of your face. And you'll notice complete and total darkness. Now,
Andrew, where are you at? You're here.
But that's a trick of the brain, because your brain knows your hand is there. Total darkness. So imagine the first explorers. I will tell a lot more about them. Their names were Herb and Jen Kahn. They had a carbide light that probably gave us about as much light as my handy-dandy big lighter. So imagine exploring a room like this and looking and finding these formations with a small light like this. Now, I did also mention that Jewel Cave was a breathing cave, which means that there's air flowing through the cave. So, what else could happen during a breathing cave? So, pretty amazing. Now, I'm sorry. I'd like to point out just a few things with my flashlight. And again, I apologize. So, right here is a very common formation. This is probably stalactite. This is probably very elementary. Probably learned this in school, that stalactites hang tight to the ceiling of the cave. Now, the formations we're looking at in this room are secondary formations. They're called studio forms, the general term for them. And they were formed after this room was formed. Again, like tiny cracks in the cave wall, water filtering through, leaving mineral deposits and making these amazing formations. Now, under the stalactite is the stalagmite. A good way to remember that is it's on the cave floor. You might trip over it if you're not watching out where you're standing. One of my favorite formations is this real skinny looking shape. And again, if you need to move so you can see me better, this is called a soda straw. And it really doesn't follow the same rules as the other formations. Rather than water running down the outside of the formation, water runs down the inside of this. So this is a narrow formation, and the inside of it is hollow, the width of one drop of water. As the water then drops off the end, it forms a small ring of minerals, thus the soda straws start growing. They're very fragile, and you can see here there's some on the cave floor, and we believe that this was not caused by unruly tourists, but just winds, natural wind blowing through the cave. Who knows how long it hasn't occurred. So that's one very common formation. We have columns. So right over here, when a stalactite and a stalagmite meet, they form a column. My favorite column, though, is right here. It's a soda straw column. Look how big that is. And so, it has a hollow center, just again the width of one drop of water, which to me is just pretty amazing. Okay, I have one more super cool thing to show you. This is like an added bonus, but I'm thinking, geology students, we better show them this. So, okay, hang on here. Gotta do some light switching. Turn this guy off. Okay. Some of the formations. Is that cool? We just learned about this. I mean, it's amazing. At least my husband and I did just not too long ago. But so formations sometimes that contain manganese or calcite, of course, show phosphorescence. And here is a perfect example. I would love to just spend a whole day in the cave shining my black light, my ultraviolet light on everything and seeing what...
Students, if you guys can like come around this way so the people that are down the alleyway can see it.
Yeah, yeah. Now that, I mean, there's enough light, I think, where you don't have to be exactly by the rail.
Connie, I will tell you that during training, my UV light was always on.
Oh, cool. Did you find some more stuff?
Oh yeah.
Oh man, you gotta take me through there and show me, yeah.
It's amazing. It's neat.
It's just so cool. So, and the way that we found out, this is how we learned too. The way that we found out, and maybe, you know, some of the resource people knew about this, but there was a young man in the cave, and he was really into looking at phosphorescent features, and he showed us some when he was in the cave, so that was pretty cool. All right, I'm gonna walk over
you see how
here
it's-
now.
oh, it stinks.
One more
That's so cool.
So we have some more formations you may have seen a little bit of. Here we go. I'm gonna switch. There we go. Now turn on a full light. So at the end of the walkway here, you'll see some formations called flowstone. And flowstone again is a speleothem or a secondary formation. It's made from calcite, like all the formations here in Jewel Cave. And it's formed by water flowing down the sides of the cave walls and making these amazing shapes. Now, most of you guys are probably too young, but some people, just as they see sheep in clouds, they think that looks like Jabba the Hutt. So you can make up your own person or whatever you want for that. So another cool formation, the type of flowstone is called drapery. Look straight up at that. And there are a lot of draperies in this room. I shine my light around here and down here. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. And again, they're formed just by water running down the cave surface, either from the ceiling or along the cave walls. And again, calcite by nature is clear or white, but of course then there are organic materials as well as minerals that cause the different colors of these formations. So I'll give you just a minute to take all this in, and then I would like to ask a volunteer to lead the group to our next stopping point, so I can kind of turn off the lights and fix. Any volunteers?
All of you.
Okay.
We're gonna get lost.
Yeah, I can't imagine being the first person to just stumble into something. I don't know, just find your way and explore it.
Because we're going through a narrower passage where you might not be able to, see the whole line, or I might not be able to see the whole line. So I'd like to just point out a few things we'll see down the passage. And the passage we're entering is called Spooky Hollow. Yes, that got your interest. And actually, there are no ghosts that we know of, but Spooky Hollow, most of the surface is covered by an element called manganese. You'll see it here on some of this nailhead spar. You see the white of the nailhead spar? But look at the nail heads of the nailhead spar. It is covered with manganese. And manganese, as an element, I call it the permanent marker of elements, because going into the wild caving tour, there are a lot of areas with a lot of manganese. So we are asked, if we do wild caving, to wear clothing you probably never want to wear again, wear shoes that you will not wear outside of the cave. One person did follow those rules last summer and wore the shoes that he wore wild caving out to his car, and all summer long there were footprints, black footprints, all the way out of the visitor center, up the stairs, across the parking lot to the car. Many rain showers did not erase them, so I will know if you guys get up. So, manganese is something that makes Spooky Hollow dark. You'll see some of that. We'll be passing by, you'll see a rail that's lit up. It'll be on my left, the really well is this left. And it's a small depression with water drops dripping into them. They're called drip holes, and they're rare. They're still studying those and wondering why are there drip holes instead of maybe stalagmites. And we don't exactly know, but it's very interesting to see them, and so interested that there is even a photo point on the sidewalk so that people studying those drip holes can take images and exactly place them. We'll also be at the lowest part of the cave at 279 feet below that first surface. Oh, I'm sorry, 379 feet below the surface. You'll know we're there when you're at the bottom of some stairs. You'll feel yourself going down, down, down. When you come to the bottom of some stairs that are going up, you're at the lowest point in the cave. From then on, it's all pretty much. The next room is called the torture room, by the way.
After some bacon. You had your bacon immediately.
So bacon is just plain old flowstone in the form of bacon. Different minerals and organic materials have stained the naturally white or clear calcite to look just like bacon. Still growing. There's a tiny drop. You can see the tip of it. Yeah. And there are like small bacons here and there, and I've seen them in other caves even, but nothing like this. Nothing like this. Yeah. We saw some at Karshner Caverns this winter. Puny bacon compared to that. Yeah, very puny. You know how if you like bacon and you go to a restaurant, you never get quite enough.
Where's the bacon strips
This is
at?
a good
Oh,
size.
wow.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? So yes, it's 23 feet long and 1/4 inch thick and about 18 inches wide. Flowstone stained by organic materials as well as minerals, and still growing. If you look at that little water drop at the tip of it, pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Huh?
Yeah.
I never get tired of seeing that. So
It looks
and it's
exactly
really
like
good.
bacon.
Nice job
I was
lighting
expecting
it,
that.
don't you think? It's, one cool thing about being a caver is you get to name stuff when you find something. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the explorers that actually found this route and convinced the Park Service that this is something that they would love to have the public see. You know, most of us could not do this, could not climb through tunnels and use ropes to get out passages, and we couldn't do that on our own, but because of these two amazing people by the name of Herb and Jan Kahn, we're able to see rooms like this, the torture room. Now, Herb and Jan Kahn actually were world-class climbers. Now, they came to the Black Hills for the climbing. Have you been on the Needles Highway yet at all?
Yes.
All those needles, pretty much they all have names because Herb and Jan had the first ascents of every single one of those needles. Pretty amazing. They knew the climbing was good here, so here they came to the Black Hills. Now they had a friend who was a geologist by the name of Dwight Deal. Now, Dwight Deal had permission from the Park Service to do some studying here in Jewel Cave, and the Park Service said, you need 2 other people to come along. Dwight was also a climber. He was friends with Herb and Jan, and Herb and Jan reluctantly agreed to go along. You know, they said, yeah, just this once. It was winter, the climbing wasn't that great. But actually, they were hooked. Once they got into the cave, they pretty much spent the rest of their lives exploring Jewel Cave. Now, Herb passed away, I think, 9 years ago, perhaps. Jan, sadly, just passed away at age 99, just a few days ago. So we're really, really missing her. She was an amazing woman, you know, up till the day she passed away still. She very articulate, intelligent, a writer, a musician, of course, a great explorer. She was the first woman to free climb Devil's Tower, by the way. So here's Herb and Janet. They were hooked. And so from 1959 until 1981, they explored 64 miles of cave. So pretty amazing. The first, we've known about Jewel Cave now for round it to 120 years. For the first half of that, for the first 60 years, less than 2 miles of the cave were known until Herb and Jan came along. Of course, after their 64 miles, they inspired the explorers today. And groups of usually 4 to 6 are still going into the cave, usually average about once a month. There are 4 camps in the cave. One of the camps actually takes 11 hours of hard caving just to get to the camp. The camps have some tarps. They have a water collection source because they've chosen places where water is dripping into these rooms so they can collect water. And they have some alcohol stoves so they can heat their dried food. Now, everything else has to be brought into the cave, so they have their food that they need for those days, which is generally very little, and all of the instruments and measuring equipment that they need. So it's pretty amazing. Their backpacks are about 18 inches long, and you can see an example of one in the visitor center with that guy dressed like a caver. They're probably maybe 7 or 8 inches around. Everything has to fit in there. They have a kind of a leather strap on them, and generally, when they're going through small tunnels, they hook their backpack on their shoe, and they drag it along. Some of the passages are as small as 7.5 inches. I could go into great detail about some of the places they've explored, but in the interest of time, we can't do that. But they'll go in. They only go for 4 days. Any guesses why they only stay for 4 days?
Temperature.
I heard somebody, temperature,
Oxygen?
body. Yeah. So what happens is, of course, everything that goes into the cave has to come out, including human waste. So not to be gross, but you imagine these little backpacks and only hold so much. So they have a very specific turnaround time because there's no way to communicate when they're in the cave. I mean, we have these awesome phones here on the tour, we call our bat phones, but satellites don't work, satellite phones don't work, of course cell phones don't work. So if something were to happen, there would be no way to contact the surface, unless they don't come out. Then they would know something went wrong. So search and rescue then would be on standby to go in. So you think about it, it takes a lot of physical skill. You can imagine, take away all the structures and imagine moving through this cave. It does require skills that often translate from climbing. So many of the cave explorers also climb as well. So first of all, it's very physically demanding. You don't get paid. Everyone's a volunteer who does it. Even the people who work here use their annual leave to explore the cave. It's kind of gross, as we talked about. It's dangerous. So, you think, why? Why do people do this? And we have a good friend by the name of Chris Belzarski. He was the person to find the first lake in the cave. When my husband and I first started volunteering here, which wasn't that long ago, like 6 years, there was a sign in the visitor center that said, there are no lakes in the cave. Just as there was a sign at the historic entrance that said, Jewel Cave is a small cave. Well, our friend Chris, on New Year's Eve in the cave, found the first lake. He named it Hourglass Lake. Actually, he named it after a dry lake bed on Mars. And he said when he stood at the edge of that lake. Windex blue, beautiful color. He thought about this. He said, more people have stood on the moon than have seen this lake. And so again, how many places on Earth have not been explored? There's plenty of spots here in Jewel Cave. So you geologists out there, lots more exploring to do as well, and it continues today. Well, I think we'll have to continue on to make sure we get out on time. Any questions before we start heading up the stairs?
Can the geology students get a group photo over here before we head up?
Oh, that'd be fine, yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank
And
you.
while you're organizing, I will tell you how this got to be called the torture room. So Herb and Jan could hear water dripping, but they couldn't find it. And you can imagine they were pretty busy. They spent sometimes 18 hours in the cave.
Yeah, I do.
Are you saying I'm short?
How deep is the lake?
There are now 14 lakes, and the water level fluctuates. The lakes are believed to be part of the Madison Aquifer, and I know one of the lakes that they explored, actually, the depth changed by 40 feet. One of the largest lakes it ranges from 100 to 200 feet long, 50 to 70 feet wide, and about the same as far as depth. So, again, lots of studying going on.
Can you take one so I can get the professor answer?
Yep.
Thank you.
And there's lots of science going on. For example, scientists have found...
We're gonna have to change hats.
I love it.
You don't want mine.
Is it a Pittsburgh Steelers cap? No, that's okay. I told you the girlfriend thing. So if you can set it up for me camera-wise.
Oh, there.
This is a pretty cool cap, though.
Wisconsin State Fair.
Oh, I love it.
There should be a one too.
That's fun.
Okay. Need you to squish in together a little bit more. There we go. Thank
This is
you.
a professional here.
Yep. 1, 2, 3. Again, stay there.
Just in case somebody blinked.
Stay there. All right, rabbit ears, everybody. Come on, you gotta do it. You gotta have one. There we go. 1,
There, but somebody got the
2, 3.
leader, yeah.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
Rabbit ears and all.
Nice.
Andy got
And
enough
we
for all
hope
of
to see
us.
you at
You got me, I think.
Cave next, yeah. All right, well, we're
I have an
gonna
child.
Is that the end of the line? Great. We have everybody. You can move forward just a little bit. This is our very last stop. Here's a nice surprise. The elevator going back up is 2 stories below the one that we went down. We're saving a few flights of stairs at least, but we like to stop at this room because this really creates a question about preserving our natural resources. So this room used to be called the Red Velvet Room. And again, continuing the food theme, Urban Jam named it after red velvet cake. And you can see there's a red substance called paleophil, and then you'll see the dogtooth or nailhead spar, the calcite that's very white, and it's very reminiscent of red velvet cake with cream cheese frosting. If you've ever had it, it's really good. So they named this room the Red Velvet Room. Then, when this route was completed and Herb walked through the route with one of the Park Service personnel, he said, you know, this room was not wet when Jan and I explored this. It was a dry room. And suddenly it's wet. So, of course, that is a huge worry for the Park Service. And they did lots of studying. They did dye studies. They sent dye through the parking lot to see if it would end up here, through the bathrooms, actually. Fortunately, that didn't pan out. So, but they believe that perhaps during the construction of the elevators, that perhaps there might have been a layer of slate, maybe, that was impacted and allowed water to seep through. So, you know, we're looking at something we did. I know we created, you know, sidewalk and platform. We didn't blast tunnels through the cave. We pretty much moved rocks to create this route and made stairs for regular people like us to move through. But yet, here's a room that we have changed, the ecosystem in this room. And so it is a dilemma. And I guess my question would be, yes, we've done something to change the cave, but also, how many of us, maybe a lot more of you than I think, but how many of us would get to see this if we did not have something like this for the Park Service to let us enjoy? So again, it's a philosophical question that you all need to answer in your own mind. But one slight consolation is that this little mounded flowstone right here, Herb said that this was here in the room, but it was dry. So that tells us that, who knows how long ago, maybe eons ago, this was a wet room, and now it's dry. But again, just a question that we need to ask ourselves. One final thing, as we came out of the elevators, you saw something that looked like a trap door. Did you see that on the floor, a metal tray-like object? We'll be walking through one of those similar ones on our way out. What it is, it's a disinfecting mat. It has a mild hydrogen peroxide solution in it. It will not harm your shoes or your clothing. But our bats have been found to have white nose syndrome. Many of you have probably heard about it. It's a fungus that affects bats. It started on the East Coast, and it's kind of working its way across the country. It was found here a couple of years ago in some of our bats. What it does is while the bats are hibernating, the fungus grows on their noses and their faces, irritates them. They wake up, they fly out. And of course, there are no insects here in the wintertime. We've seen it, an unfortunate bat 2 or 3 times in the last couple of winters. You know, hiking in Hell Canyon in February, here's a bat. So it's tough. So we can pass that fungus on our shoes from one cave to another. So we just ask all visitors to just walk through that to hopefully help protect our bats. The last count of the bats hibernating in the historic entrance was about 500. A few years ago, the count was 1,500. Now, we don't know if it's a natural change or if it was due to the white nose. We don't know. But bats are amazing creatures that do us a lot of good. They eat a lot of mosquitoes, as well as other insects. They pollinate our crops. So we want to keep our bats safe. Well, onward. And again, I thank you all on behalf of the Park Service. You are an amazing group. Come back. Come back.
Thank you.
Well, you guys were an awesome tour group.
Thank you.
Amazing place, isn't it? You know what we call that? We call that cave
You're welcome.
kiss. And it's supposed to bring you luck.
I love it.
Yeah, there you go. Or go to Deadwood, or whatever.
Well, we're going there.
Yeah, and that's just not the luckiest place in the world.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, this is the power door.
Still walk along.
So
There we
it was a
go.
public
Well,
one.
again, we'll take 2 trips up and bring you back to
Yeah, students hang back and then we'll take the second.
There we go.
They don't need to smell us.
Usually we have to leave one group alone while we take the other group up, and I always think there's going to be a prankster. They're going to hide somewhere in there. So far,
Go back in the cave.
now we have backup, so.
That's what we can hear like sealing off.
You can hear the airlocks doing it.
The air is locked.
So at Wind Cave, when they start the tour, they hold a flag next to the door, and it either is blowing out or blowing in, depending on the barometric pressure outside. It's super cool. But you can feel,
We need to go and scroll through photos.
you can feel the air.
Oh, yeah.
Get out of here so we can get out of here.
And the whole time she was like 15 feet in front of him, not listening.
So for you students, one of the things that, like I said, I was talking in the back, our caves over 800 feet deep, so discovered. You guys come back, maybe join one of our wild caving groups, or you go with the Baja Sapa Grotto and become some of our cave explorers. As you heard, you get to name the rooms. You may be able to name the next lake, you may be able to find something, or you may be able to meet me if I have to come down for search and rescue. There's always hope.
Is there our contact for the grotto?
Yes, you just call Jewel Cave. And Baja Sapa Grotto is on Facebook and online that you'll find some good references for it. And come on.
It's coming down now.
So yeah, if you can take a look at that. And it is pretty neat to go on our wild caving tour. Like I said, you're going to ruin everything that you're wearing, but it is pretty neat to see. We only allow 5 people a week to do that, so it's a very limited number that have actually been on that. So, but like I said, you get your skills and then decide to go further, you certainly can. So.
I'm guessing there are tiers of exploration.
Yes, yes. And Connie didn't know it, but I did. We actually had a group come in on Saturday. And so we're hoping that we get our number goes up.
Is it just a volunteering thing?
Yes, it's all volunteers. The only people that get voluntold are those of us on search and rescue.
I'll be back in a year and a half and get really good shape.
All right, hit that lobby button. Take us to the top.
These are Eames.
So guys, in talking with your professor, who I see over there now with the hat, go out here, turn right, stop. I'm going to grab our caving kits so you'll be able to see what all they take down, and so that you can see what they're pulling around, what they're having to do. And we've got a couple examples of what they used to use and what thankfully we use now in our cave exploration. So,
Cool. Thank you.
got a year and a half now.
I know.
That's it.
I'll be back.
And with with 3 to 5% and 200 miles. There's still about 1,000 miles out there for you.
Lake Aaron.
Yep, just right over here, guys. I'll bring it on out and we'll go from there.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you, ma'am. Hey, we'll get a picture. Rockies rock. Wow. That is the face of terror.
Wait, let me turn the flash off.
Yep, just grab a chair. I'll be
Great.
right back.
The face of pure.
That is the face of a fire.
Tuck your arms in. There you go.
He's gonna bring that pack out.
Good morning, good morning.
Yeah. I actually, that's with your journal assignment. You're gonna have a journal assignment tonight. You know what it's called? No. Oh, that's a good one. No, but that's a good one.
John G. Cameron.
I guess I do have to know, just he was very, very first time ever in
Aaron with one egg.
Lake Aaron.
What a great person he is. Jewel K, we are believing one of the very longest age in the entire world. We are at
No, I think we're going to go to pause.
Fresh man lake, basically it's water. No, like fresh.
Lake View 6.
Today, we're going to be walking along a half-mile that's over 700 stairs. And over about 6 places to drive. And I go over some of the history and geology.
No Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Really, anytime y'all hear my voice, I was like, just like right now, y'all doing a great job. It's really cool.
All right, I'm going to come over here right to this corner.
As we're walking though, you guys are welcome to kind of talk to each other, point things out.
Okay.
And I do ask you to do rules as we are rules. And so those are everyone's on 3 shoes. So today we have the ones that you go to each side as we stroll down the stairs. I don't know if you write anything to take photos with, or if you find it front. There's a lot of pictures that we did. Pictures are fine, flash is fine.
Okay.
Just be curious, flash.
This.
And I just have no photos, please, while we're going.
All right, guys. So if you can imagine as geologists, rocks are your thing.
It's really easy.
Now you're down underneath. You've got yourself a canvas hat connected to a carbide
Well, your
lamp.
best pictures are going to
And
turn
of course, we all know as that light, what happens when it goes out. And you can feel.
And then hopefully all have good breakfast.
Pass all that
We
around.
have snacks.
Okay, these are your tools of your non-modern caver, you might say. A 50-foot tape. Every marker, and some of you may have seen the tape when I stopped
We have
there,
a trash
because I
can
think
over
it's just
here
like
with the
that.
elevators.
Every marker, you're able to see the next marker, so you can follow your number back. We, as I was talking with this gentleman right here, we saw marker number 59. Okay, and so that means that there's 58 other markers to get out. Now, there is a group called the miseries, right? The miseries are about as tall. Okay, your body is able to compress about the same time as to here. It is that size. If you go out to that rock, to our thing and crawl through, it's about 8.5 inches by about 16. Right? That's what you're going to crawl through for a couple hundred yards to make it over to this side. That's why they put in the modern trail route. So with Herb and Jan Kahn really helping us with that modern route. But if you can imagine every 50 feet, they're taking in, putting in a new marker, and they're having to do this one. Thankfully, modern technology wins.
Mission wheel, it's like a big lighter.
Modern technology wins. Right there. You can figure out how far away, and he is, distance, boom, right there. So make sure to clear it off. Come on, work. No, my battery's probably. But laser is there, so we can actually go ahead and see that modern technology works for us. The other thing that we have as a tool. Somewhere down here.
They sell these at a gift shop. Put your GoPro on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're gonna cruise to that elevator.
Yeah, but
Yeah, where they are.
Forget how to use the Broughton compass.
That's what you're trying to do. What goes inside?
Right. One part of the room is on the elevator, down the elevator, and then I'll return right back up to that.
I used to know how to do strike and dip with it. I would need a refresher.
Last year, we were expecting you were going to teach everyone.
So, you can tell.
Ooh, cool. Ooh, what do you guys think it is just from this far away? You think so?
Salt.
Looks like salt. Tripping you. Ooh.
Finally, best tool we have out there for this, instead of using it, compass and 50-foot tape, we've got our laser, plus we have this little beauty. We can do strike and dip, that's up, downs, and everything else. Compass is already on it, so that we can see how it works as you look through it, so that you've got an aim point. You have somebody go put their marker right there so that you can map out this room. The biggest thing that you've got as a helper is this right here. It doesn't mean anything when you're down in the cave unless you record it. And that's our biggest thing, is recording it. Like I said, there's a lot of great stuff that we have in the cave. Now, you're coming in, you've got that nice little canvas hat. No, thankfully not. You have our modern stuff that we have here, so that you can have a caver's helmet, pads, gloves, all that to protect there. Because I will tell you, EMS is, if you're down in cave in camp number 4, okay, you are still literally, even if we kept going overnight, 3 days away, okay, to get you out and back at least. And that's going to be kind of hard if you had a stretcher going through such a small area. Right? I will give you a little bit of relief in the fact that we do have the ability to have drilled some holes down to some of our rooms so that we can drop stuff down. So you don't have to pack up everything in your backpack, or in our case, your side pack. Everything that you're going to take with you goes in here.
So is it not required to take ropes for ascending and rappelling?
Some we do, but there are some down there. But for a lot of parks, no, we don't have to. But it's yes, there are times that we do have ropes, and that is part of your weight.
Yep.
And part of your size.
Yeah, that's a big part.
And I will tell you, you're taking high calorie, low bulk foods, because what goes out in has to come out.
Are there stores down there anywhere? So
Yes.
where they have like launch points?
Yes, we do. And that's the thing. We do have some holes down there where we can drop supplies to push it through. And so we've got most of our supplies, like the camp stoves and things like that down. Okay. But they still have to go from those drop points. If you can imagine, and this is the great thing about when we first came in, you guys didn't get to see this, but why it's called the target room. Herb and Jan Kong, using it's a 50-foot tape and compass, okay, had marked out a path, came into that big room in the target room, and said, okay, now let's take a map up here. And they hired a drilling company. We hired a drilling company to drill down. They were off by 3 inches. Wow. Over a mile through the caves, they were off by about 3 inches. Not too terribly bad. Okay. And so they came down. And if we look out here, you can't see it, but right down here in the middle of this little trees that comes right here, this little area between these trees, that is where the target room is. And that's where that is dropped down. It was capped there. There's no reason for us to have that. Okay, but it is marked. If you ever go on a discovery tour or come back, we show you that cap. Now, in case of emergency, from the target room, there is a man-made hall. It looks like kind of like the doomsday kind of looking halls that we always see them running down. Goes out for a mile to Lithograph Canyon out that way. So we can, if there was something wrong with the elevators or if we needed to, that we can get people out that way. So, which is pretty crazy. But again, all that had to be explored and figured out originally from 59 through 81, okay, via these non-technical tools that we have. Today, they'll take down and they can take one of the laser things, set it on a tripod, let it go down and map everything. And it's always got that information in there. And it's pretty amazing what they can do now. But again, because like Hourglass Lake, you come back, do this, you could be the one finding our next lake or next room or whatever.
These passages are challenging.
Yeah, who knows? But this is, those are the tools you might say you guys use to get down. And that is pretty crazy.
Do they take any, like, what are they sleeping on?
Tarps.
Okay.
Okay, that's why they said 4 days. Right now, there's some sleeping bags down there, but with 98% humidity, they're damp and wet. Okay, they get cold. So, but your body temperature, if you're staying at 49 degrees, which we are down there, 4 days is about the max you can handle before having problems. So, but who knows? We're thinking about trying to put in a 5th camp, because as I said, we just had people in there last Saturday. Okay, they've got a couple more miles. It takes a long time to get to these camps, just to get to them before you can find something new that's undiscovered. Any other great questions?
The map, can we look at the map?
Oh, of course, head right over there, and there's actually one there's a better one inside the visitor center.
Does it show like where exploration is currently?
Yes, I will, and I will show you that. I'll walk over there with you. I just need all the crystals and good stuff back. Get tossed in here. For us guys, it's not too terribly bad. Yeah. You know what these are used for? Oh yeah. Always, never drink out of the ones with the eggs. It's a small bed. You just said the whole cave? No.
Without the fancy, passages partially collapse until piles of breakdown. Depositing unique calcite formations to
Well, no, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the wild tour.
Yeah, that's the wild cave tour. Yep.
complement the complexity of the